Hello everybody, so before I get into this response, I want to do a cheeky bit of housekeeping. See, I teased the prospect of a future video where I would respond to some of the comments, which I'm definitely going to do. However, there are a few points I want to address right now. First and foremost, my decision in the last video to refer to ContraPoints with female pronouns. This did not go down well with the haters. Despite the fact that you don't misgender or deadname Natalie, you still do, however subtly, insist that she is not a woman. In other words, that she is a man. It's not because I think Natalie is a woman. I don't want Natalie to feel worse about herself. Well, that's all the good that's gonna do. I will not misgender her because I don't want to upset her. The anti-feminist bro said in the same breath with, I don't think she's a woman. Off to a great start, my dude. It's kind of funny how in the beginning of the video, you said the only reason you're respecting her names and pronouns is because you don't want to be the reason why trans people feel sad or angry, because soon after, you said you don't believe she's a woman. Then you said that most trans women act more like men because they send people death threats and harass them. You say in the beginning of the video that you are going to refer to Natalie by her name because you want to be very nice, kind and respectful, and that is literally what transphobia is. The idea that trans people are so unworthy of respect that referring to them by their name makes you very nice, kind and respectful, when in reality it's literally basic human decency. I was going to entertain this video until you went into a thing about pronouns and how you're going to grant Natalie respect because you don't want to make her feel bad, as if granting somebody dignity is some grand gesture. Get over yourself. And at the same time I had some responses from my feminist supporters. Don't really like that you decided referring to trans people by their preferred pronouns is nicer than not being sexist. You know you cannot criticize a transvestite's delusional, woman-hating garbage by calling him by the wrong name and using false pronouns. You have to tell the truth about him. If you are going to criticize somebody like this, you cannot feed the lie. It undercuts your argument. I don't think Contra is trying to reach across the aisle, but is trying to shut up women. His hatred for women drips out of every word he says. I don't know how much you have listened to this guy. You mean well, but by not telling the truth about him, you undercut the purpose of your video. What you describe is in your opening statement about treating Natalie as he wishes to be treated, see what I did there, is simply being polite. What you describe is exactly what women used to do to be kind, polite and accepting. I don't have a problem with others doing it, but I'm not going to gaslight myself anymore when it comes to pronouns. As a man, Natalie hasn't attacked and mocked your existence, so it's easier to be polite. To me, Natalie is in blackface, jiving and shucking his homage to what he thinks womanhood is. ContraPoints is a man. I know you had to call him a she, otherwise your video will get taken down for hate speech. So I want to clarify a few points. First of all, I think ContraPoints is a man. That isn't a secret. Secondly, the reason I said I was going to use Contra's preferred pronouns is because otherwise I would be unintentionally insulting Contra every single time I used a third person singular pronoun. So why don't I want to do this? Well, there are three reasons. The first is yes, that I don't want to upset trans people. That's not some kind of massive self-aggrandizing thing. Trans people have high rates of suicide and depression. And as somebody who has dealt with suicidal thoughts and depression, that breaks my heart. If there's anything I can do to make trans people feel happier and healthier and more accepted, then I will do that. However, there is an obvious limit. I can't change my beliefs for the sake of sparing somebody's feelings. Even if we assume that degree of doxastic voluntarism were possible, it wouldn't be very principled of me to do so. More to the point though, that's insulting, and I have too much respect for trans people to treat them like that. To completely abandon my beliefs for the sake of trans people would be to treat trans people as if they are incapable of hearing somebody politely disagree. Every now and then I get comments from fantastic trans people and gender non-conforming people and non-binary people who say that while they disagree with me, they can respect that this disagreement doesn't need to tear us apart. I like to believe all human beings are capable of this. It is also for the sake of my trans fans that I try to avoid being too forceful with my position that trans people don't become another gender. Now, there is a second reason why I don't want to insult trans people too much, and that is to actually foster a healthier debate. There is nothing hateful about believing Contra is a man, and there is nothing hateful about using pronouns consistent with this belief. However, the debate has been poisoned to the extent that one side can't express their opinion without being called hateful. It's an impossible debate to have because the very terminology used to refer to trans people is wrapped up in this central question that you can either accept or reject. By going above and beyond to the point of inconsistency to show that I don't hate trans people, I'm hoping that maybe people can change their minds and this debate can become a bit less hateful. However, it seems that my efforts have generally failed. As I predicted, people have accused me of being insincere. Some have even accused me of being self-aggrandizing. And meanwhile, many of my Radfem fans, who I appreciate so much, have rightly pointed out that I'm being inconsistent. They have also pointed out that I'm engaging in a civility politics that I have the luxury of engaging in as a straight white male. An oppressive class isn't trying to force their way into my spaces. My identity isn't being erased. I'm not being harassed anything like as much as most female gender critical feminists are. And it's from this position that I espouse the virtues of civility politics and meeting in the middle. I have these two competing positions, and I don't know what to do. Fortunately, I have Manchis coming in with the third reason why I use female pronouns, because I know that my video would get taken down for hate speech otherwise. In general, trans activists and their allies tend to behave very similar to men's rights activists and the alt-right. They intensely moralize debates to make discussion impossible. They use a system of buzzwords to categorize and dehumanize their opponents, and they silence marginalized groups and rejoice when they have been silenced. Therefore, it seems perfectly reasonable to suppose that these people will do the old reactionary tactic of reporting and flagging this video to have it taken down. I'd like to hope that they wouldn't, but I have no reason to trust that they wouldn't. It seems to me to be the case that linking to videos that break Twitter's rules can cause you to be banned from Twitter, for example. And since it's against Twitter's rules to misgender, I could lose my Twitter account by linking to a video where I quote-unquote misgender Natalie. Therefore, let's say that this is why I still refer to Natalie by female pronouns, because it's the most effective way to ensure this video doesn't get taken down. Of course, secretly I'm doing it to be nice, but we'll ignore that. I know that the people who hate me are very angry that I'm not so easy to categorize as a hateful bigot, which is their only real tactic. Therefore, by saying that I'm only doing this to avoid being flagged for hate speech, maybe they can get some happiness out of calling me a coward or something. Two other things. This comment was posted. Good arguments in the comments, but one thing I noticed is that there appears to be two separate and distinct groups of tranny men. We have individuals like our friend Nick/Natalie here, who obviously self-identifies as one of the beautiful people. Then we have another group of individuals that look like Abe Vigoda in drag. For those of you who don't know, Abe Vigoda played a person in a thing. He donned drag in one episode. What do you say? Peace. I responded, it's late here right now, so I'll respond to your general point later. But for now, is it alright if you drop that particular term to refer to trans people? And somebody else chimed in, why? They are your people, respect their bigotry, or don't you like it because it exposes you for who you are? Now, this is funny to me because this guy can't handle that I'm policing the bigotry on my side. It reminds me of a discussion that happened on a Megan Murphy video I commented on. All it takes to be gender critical at this point is to see people being harassed and silenced and to say to yourself, that's not okay. And somebody responded, it's not okay to harass and silence trans people, bigots. To which I said, I agree. Anytime you want me to condemn somebody doing that, just let me know who they are and you'll have a forthcoming condemnation. Will you condemn the people who got Megan Murphy suspended? And I got radio silence. See, this is your mind on trans identity politics. It actually makes you angry to see people policing bigotry and harassment on their own end. So to be clear, anybody using the word tranny in my comment section will be dealt with harshly. Because honestly, I'm past caring about the toxicity coming from the trans activist side. There's too much to even begin to challenge it. But any side I'm going to identify with is going to be a side that doesn't use bigoted language. Anyway, so then this guy responded, tranny men? Got it. Note to self, no more microaggressions, no more tranny men. From now on, it's trans-identified individuals or trans people. Now, to me, it seems like this person was trying basically to get away with saying the word tranny 2 more times. Again, that's not okay. So I'm going to be deleting this guy's comments, but regarding the claim that this person is on my side, if you look at the end of their comment, he says, she got hit with the Trump bump, the Trump effect, if you will. It seems like this guy is a Trump supporter. So no, not on my side. I'm not against Trump supporters watching my content and trying to learn from it, so long as they don't engage in any bigotry. Now, finally, and I don't like that I have to talk about this, but anybody following me onto my other videos and harassing me will be blocked from my channel. See, as far as I'm concerned, you can post whatever horrible things you want about me in the comment section of my video. I can handle it. I do draw the line at harassing women who comment on my videos because I'm not going to facilitate that on my channel. I want women commenting here to know that harassment won't be facilitated by my free speech anything goes policy. If you want to get out your hatred, take it out on me, not others. But Some people clearly got annoyed that I wasn't giving them enough attention in the comment section of that video, so they went onto my other videos and started attacking me there. So basically, if you do that, you get blocked from the channel, and then you won't have any outlet for all your impotent rage at all, and you'll be sad. So please keep the anger limited to the comment section of the video that actually made you angry, and don't go harassing me on my other videos, and don't harass anybody else in the comment section of my videos. So with all of that said, let's jump into the response.
I have no idea what it's like to be catcalled as a 9-year-old girl or what that does to a child's psyche. That kind of thing didn't start happening to me till I was an adult, when I knew what I was getting into and was ready for it. That's very different from what cis women go through. My upbringing in adolescence has more in common with a typical man than a typical woman, and many of my experiences from those days I simply can't make sense of as female experiences. I absolutely benefited from male privilege, and it did influence who I was, and who I was in my late teens and early 20s was an anti-feminist shithead who had no idea what women go through.
So Natalie starts off by agreeing with us, like she's some kind of disgusting reactionary transphobe.
I'd really rather stay inside collecting ceramics and sucking dick. Now, I'm not saying that makes me a woman.
I've watched this clip like a dozen times, trying to work out why Natalie thought this was a good thing to include in this video. Have you ever noticed how much trans people have to clarify that their misogynistic and reductive description of womanhood is not in fact a misogynistic and reductive description of womanhood? They always have to explain that they're just saying that's their experience or, you know, anything else. I feel like it would have saved everybody a lot of time and themselves a lot of lost integrity if they just dropped the misogynistic and reductive descriptions of womanhood in the first place.
And I tried every possible alternative to transitioning before realizing that I had an irrepressible need to become a woman.
Now, I think I might be able to prove that you don't have an irrepressible need to become a woman. See, let me put it this way. Imagine for a minute that you got all the surgery and HRT you wanted. Not only that, but you got society's acceptance as a woman. Every single person was willing to accept that you are, in fact, a woman. Would that satisfy your irrepressible need? Because guess what? You still wouldn't be a woman. See, either no amount of collective delusion regarding your gender will appease you, in which case your irrepressible need becomes simply an irrepressible desire, since needing an impossibility is absurd, or else the collective societal belief that you are a woman would in fact satisfy your need, in which case you have contradicted yourself, since you'd be appeased while still not being a woman. Either way, you're wrong. Now, if you said that you had a need to be gender non-conforming, that would be a much more coherent reality to entertain. Instead, you're saying you have a need to become something which you fundamentally cannot become. If you held to the former position, I'd stand beside you as an ally, but instead, you're telling me that you need to do something which I consider to be impossible, and then accusing me of being hateful when I maintain that you have not done the thing that you said you needed to do. Basically, you're walking up to me and saying, I'm happy now, I've become a woman. And I say, I'm happy you're happy, but no you haven't. And that makes me bigoted in some way, just for saying you haven't done the thing which you didn't do. Indeed, no gender-critical person is saying that you shouldn't be a woman, or that they won't let you be a woman, so telling them that you need to be a woman is meaningless to the discussion. The position is, always has been and always will be, that you becoming a woman is an impossibility.
My friends, family, fans, enemies, stalkers, and radical feminist haters started commenting on my physical appearance about 20 to 30 times more often.
It's funny that you throw radical feminist into the mix here, when with radical feminists, it's for a totally different reason. Radical feminists are concerned with how the ways that you present yourself might communicate certain ideas about womanhood and femininity if it were to be accepted that you are in fact a woman. There are other radical feminists who might say that you aren't passable, but this is to stress the point that accepting you as a woman means accepting people who obviously aren't women as women. In both cases, this has nothing to do with beauty standards or anything anti-feminist or misogynistic like that, and everything to do with the definition of womanhood.
Whereas Caitlyn Jenner, she made millions of dollars in men's sports, she had 6 children by 3 wives, she transitioned in retirement at age 65, and told BuzzFeed that the hardest part of being a woman is figuring out what to wear. This is the only trans woman most people have heard of. It makes me want to cry.
Well done for calling out Brucey, I guess.
Many trans women are feminine and queer before they transition, and have always experienced a kind of femphobia that is rooted in misogyny.
There's an important distinction to be made between male privilege and masculine privilege. As a big guy who likes sports and likes the taste of beer and etc., I'm very gender conforming. There are a lot of privileges that I have which aren't experienced by more feminine men. I am, in some sense, very lucky that I actively enjoy being very stereotypically masculine. And of course, Natalie doesn't experience this privilege, nor does any man who isn't maximally masculine. However, male privilege is a different thing to masculine privilege. And there is nothing to suggest that trans women don't possess male privilege. Indeed, the fact that Natalie stands alongside a bunch of dudes who make up mainstream YouTube feminism is pretty telling. It's almost like people with penises are raised to believe that their opinions matter more, and that they have this entitlement mentality that makes them feel it's their place to comment on the issues of marginalized groups that have nothing to do with them. Shit. I think I need to delete my channel, guys.
Some trans women also identified as women years before transitioning and internalized society's messaging about women more than society's messaging about men.
So here Natalie argues that some men think they're women. Therefore, they feel the pain of women who actually face misogyny. I mean, that must just be so hard for them. I really don't know what to say in response to that. We've reached peak not making misogyny about the actual women who experience it.
There's a sense that the essential thing that confirms your identity is pain. What it is to be trans is to despise your body. What it is to be a woman is to be brutalized by men.
You know that thing I said about how trans women often provide very simplistic definitions of particular genders and then insist that they're in fact not doing just that? Well, here we have an example of what is called projection. See, gender-critical feminists aren't saying that the pain of gendered and sex-based oppression is what defines womanhood, but rather that it is a very relevant facet of womanhood. No gender-critical feminist is saying that womanhood is sex-based oppression and the more sex-based oppression you face, the more womanly you are. They're simply pointing out that sex-based oppression is one of the many reasons not only why certain people can't be considered a woman, but also why woman shouldn't be a label that one can just decide applies to them. In short, the oppression experienced for being who you are and society deciding that who you are is inferior is very different from the oppression of deciding to express yourself in a particular way and society deciding that contradicts who you are. The category of woman is useful because it describes people in the former category. The category of gender non-conforming is useful because it describes people in the latter category. Now, there are people who do belong in both categories. They're called trans men. Trans women, on the other hand, belong to the second category, but when it comes to the first category, they belong to the group doing the oppression, not the group experiencing it. Trans women are oppressed based on how they express themselves, but they aren't oppressed based on who they are, since who they are is men. The least oppressed group of all.
You don't know what it's like to occupy an identity so stigmatized that most of the people who are attracted to you in private are too ashamed to admit it in public.
You know, I don't think a single person has accused me of being secretly attracted to Natalie. This is surprising considering the fact I saw several people on her subreddit accusing the people on the gender critical subreddit of being secretly attracted to Natalie. Indeed, while I don't doubt that there are people out there who are secretly attracted to Natalie but won't admit it in public, I think by bringing this up, Natalie is contributing to this harmful idea that the gender critical position reduces down some kind of sexual confusion. For the record, I think Natalie looks alright. I already said I think she looks passable in the last video, even though other people disagreed, but frankly, I'm not attracted to her just because of her personality, if nothing else.
At a time when we should be marching side by side to destroy video games forever, #YesAllGamers.
Very funny. But again, I must reiterate from my last video that the opposition to cooperation is coming largely from your side.
But of course, no individual woman experiences all the things women experience, and individual women understand the meaning of womanhood in drastically different ways. For some women, having babies is the most essentially womanly experience. For others, maybe it's having an abortion.
Again, we have Natalie repeating the same mistake of thinking that when a gender-critical feminist gives an example of why she's not a woman, it therefore follows that every single person must have experienced these things the exact same way in order to be a woman, and if any woman hasn't experienced these things, it follows that they're not a woman. No, the point is that these things, in general, are what make somebody a woman, and personal choices or physical anomalies should not open the door to men deciding they are a woman all of a sudden, because hey, you know what? I haven't had children, but then neither has my sister. So there.
You can't just say woman. That is what you are. No one is asking that you stop referring to yourself as a woman.
Well, thank you. How gracious of you. But the problem is that by reducing the association between reproductive rights and womanhood down to a choice, you're causing those issues to no longer be feminist issues. You are ignoring the sociological, historical, and scientific reality that these things are feminist issues. You're also, more harmfully, ignoring and downplaying the reason why these are even issues in the first place. The reason why people throughout history and to this day have denied women their reproductive rights isn't because they really hate menstruators or breeders or whatever else. It's because they really hate women. They hate women. And their hatred of women is what motivates them to push through all sorts of policies that harm women based on their biology. By coming in and saying, you're a woman too, and that individuals with female biology are only a subset of women, you are confusing an issue at a time when we can't afford to have it be confused. What we are dealing with here is hatred. Hatred of women. We are dealing with misogyny. Any attempt to disassociate female biology from women does nothing to hurt the people who attack female biology, but it does a lot to confuse the message of feminist women fighting against biological oppression.
The word TERF is a pejorative for a person who dresses up transphobia with radical feminism.
So at the beginning of the video, Natalie said,
TERFs don't like being called TERFs. They think it's a term of disparagement, which it is.
And perhaps at that point I should have decided it wasn't worth responding, because we have seen that Natalie doesn't really care about, women. But more to the point, she doesn't care about the specific women who are voicing their concerns. She doesn't care that women are being harassed off Twitter. She doesn't care that women are scared in their own safe spaces. She doesn't care that women are being attacked based on their female biology, while being told by organizations that are supposed to be representing them that their female biology isn't intrinsic to their womanhood. And when I consider all of that, I understand why some of you guys are annoyed that I'm still calling her a woman. But more to the point, if TERF is somebody who is transphobic, then I'm not a TERF. I'm also not an ally with TERFs. A transphobe is somebody who hates or otherwise dislikes gender non-conforming people. I don't hate gender non-conforming people. This is one of the reasons why I'm not fond of using anti-transphobe tweets as evidence of anti-gender critical sentiments. Because while I'm sure that people making those tweets consider me to be a transphobe, I know I'm not a transphobe. I know that I hate transphobes. I know that when push comes to shove, I will delete a comment that calls Natalie a tranny, but I won't delete a comment that calls me a disgusting reactionary who deserves to burn, because all I care about is opposing bigotry from all sides. As a straight white, gender-conforming dude, attacking me is not bigotry. Now, I can't account for every single bigoted comment coming from a gender-critical feminist. I certainly can't account for comments made by right-wing transphobes who are on the total opposite side to me on this issue. However, I refer back to the initial comment thread where somebody said it was wrong to silence trans people. I said I agreed. I agree that it's wrong to attack trans people, and it's wrong to call trans people horrible names, and that what I want more than anything is to have a dialogue and potentially even a significant alliance with trans people, even while we may disagree in many areas. Can any trans activist, genderist, or libfem say the same thing regarding gender-critical feminists?
A slur is a pejorative that targets someone's race, religion, gender, or sexuality. The word misogynist is pejorative, it has only negative connotations, and is often used as an insult, but it's not a slur. It targets bigoted behavior and beliefs, not a type of person. The same is true of the word TERF.
I love these videos because they always just miss the mark, which means I get to nudge them just in the right direction. You see, Natalie is right that the term TERF is equivalent to a word that describes hatred of a particular gender. But that term isn't misogynist. The term is misandrist. You see, Natalie done fucked up, because her entire argument is that TERF can't be a slur, since it's attacking an idea rather than a group. First of all, this would create a world where you couldn't call somebody a bigot for criticizing Islam, since you've accepted there's a difference between a group and an idea, and I'm not sure how libfems would cope with that. But more to the point, we all know that when somebody uses the word misandrist, they're not criticizing genuine man-hatred. Instead, they're criticizing legitimate points being raised by feminists and conflating them with man-hatred. Men have male privilege, misandrist. Women need their own private spaces, misandrist. All men are potential rapists, misandrist, and so on and so on. Of course, the parallel is pretty obvious, but just as a victory lap, I'll just go ahead and make the parallels. Trans women have male privilege, TERF. Women need their own private spaces, TERF. Trans women are potential rapists, TERF. Of course, there are examples that don't parallel quite as well. Feminists are called misandrists for all sorts of reasons. It's also very similar to the term feminazi. Bear in mind that somebody who uses the term feminazi believes they're describing a legitimately objectionable dimension of the feminist community, but actually they're just attacking women standing up for their rights. Now, feminazi and misandrist are both slurs. They're slurs used to silence women who are concerned about their rights. And so it is with TERF. See, this is why we should be allies, Natalie. You got us most of the way towards defeating your own argument by making the misogyny comparison, and you set me up perfectly to just take it a little bit further by comparing TERF much more accurately to the anti-woman slur misandrist. It's just like that time when Sean compared women to segregation-era white people. What is it with genderists and bringing out self-destructive analogies?
TERFs. I've used the term gender critical in this video to be inviting to fence sitters, but I refuse to cooperate with racists who want me to use their euphemisms, and I generally do the same with TERFs. Now, I'm a very agreeable, non-confrontational person. I usually like to call people by whatever they want to be called. But when it comes to race realist or gender critical, every time I use these phrases, I'm essentially becoming an accomplice in their scheme to legitimize bigotry.
Oh, poor you. Imagine being forced into a situation where you have to use terms that don't accurately reflect your view of the world. I can't even imagine what that's like. I'm sure it's very hard for Natalie. I'm sure that she has to use terms that she considers to be inaccurate or improper or harmful all the time. I'm sure that she has to do this just to stop a certain subset of viewers from getting upset. I'm sure she has to do this because people won't even take her seriously if she doesn't toe the line of her opposition's naming conventions. I'm sure she might even face being banned for hate speech if she uses the terms she thought were most accurate and proper. The joke is that I've been calling Natalie by her preferred names and pronouns for precisely this reason, and all I have received is resentment and scorn from Natalie's side. Meanwhile, Natalie reacts indignantly at the fact that there's some minor expectation that she describe gender-critical feminists in a way that accurately describes their beliefs, instead of referring to them by a word that's often accompanied with threats of violence and being forcefully silenced.
Since most of the language used by TERFs is specifically designed to be maximally hurtful, harmful, and insulting to trans people. They call trans women TIMs, an acronym for trans-identified males, and trans men TIFs, trans-identified females, obviously with the intent of mockery and misgendering.
Actually, TIM is intended to be minimally hurtful while being maximally accurate. Gender-critical feminists agonize over exactly the same issues that I have agonized over before discussing these issues. How do we remain consistent with our beliefs while not giving ammo to the trans activist lie that we hate trans people? For me, the answer is almost total capitulation, just short of calling trans women women. I call them trans women, I call them by female pronouns, I call them by their preferred name. Trans people have made it very clear that this isn't enough, and I will only be seen as worthy of having a discussion with and being taken seriously as somebody with legitimate concerns when I accept fully that trans women are women. Many gender-critical feminists are not like me, and they will stick to their guns and misgender and dead name, and of course, they don't use the word trans women. After all, in their minds, trans women aren't women. So it doesn't make sense to use a term that implies some kind of transformation into women. So they got together and tried to come up with a term, and that term that they came up with was TIM and TIF, trans-identified male and trans-identified female. In other words, a male with male biology who considers themselves to be trans, or a female with female biology who considers themselves to be trans. These terms are the most staggeringly neutral terms I can imagine. They perfectly communicate what trans women are from a gender-critical perspective without resorting to any bigoted language or language that precludes the possibility of the gender-critical perspective being wrong. The only reason I don't use the terms is because they're so obscure that it just seems more effort than it's worth. But honestly, I might start using them now just because, well, I've convinced myself they're useful. And what did Natalie say? That this term is designed to be maximally hurtful. I mean, this is what we're up against. We can't call Natalie a trans-identified male, which is exactly what she is, without being accused of trying to be maximally hurtful. Not just slightly hurtful, not just a bit politically incorrect, maximally hurtful.
So in fact, what TERFs really oppose is not trans women being feminine or trans women being masculine, but trans women being trans women.
I love this. Like, she's created a lie that doesn't exist and triumphantly debunks it. No gender-critical feminist has claimed that the problem with trans women is that they are hyper-feminine or hyper-masculine. That is one of the problems, but yes, fundamentally, the problem is that they are trans women. Again, this is hilarious to me. These people are dropping epic truth bombs, and here's the biggest, most epic truth bomb of all. The people who have repeatedly been saying that trans women aren't in fact women. Well, you wouldn't believe this, but Natalie got all dressed up. She set up the whole studio to reveal this dark secret that the gender-critical feminists won't tell you. They have a problem with the concept of somebody being a trans woman. Now, I should clarify some points. Natalie frames this as people having a problem with Tims being Tims, and this could be seen as implying the problem is that Tims exist at all. That isn't true. See, in the eyes of gender-critical feminists, quote-unquote trans women are simply gender non-conforming men. So yes, It's not that Tims are too feminine or too masculine. Nobody could give the most microscopic of shits. The fundamental problem is the suggestion that a man can become a woman. It's not a secret. That's what we're against. Natalie is not a woman. The only reason you may think there's some effort to hide it is because you force us to use feminine language when talking about Tims, because otherwise you'll call us hateful and bigoted at best and get us banned and silenced at worst. Not to mention the fact a lot of us are trying to be nice to avoid upsetting you. But if you think that the claim that gender-critical feminists believe that trans woman is a nonsensical term and that a man can never become a woman is some kind of reveal, then you've been duped by your own side. They have forced us to use their language with the threat of being silenced otherwise, and then accuse us of being duplicitous by revealing things about us that we've been saying all along. And if that isn't Orwellian, I don't know what is.
In other words, the fundamental issue underlying all these phony concerns is transphobia.
No. Saying gender-critical feminists hold amnesty towards trans people's existence is like saying that atheists hate God. Gender-critical feminists have no problem with gender non-conforming people. That is what trans people are in the eyes of gender-critical feminists. What underpins gender-critical feminism is quite simply the statement, a woman is an adult human female, not a man with gender dysphoria. And maybe Natalie would call this animosity. But bear in mind, she's also the person who considers the phrase trans-identified male to be maximally hurtful. So I wouldn't take her assessment on what's hateful to be worth much.
Homophobia and transphobia do not originate in the frontal cortex.
Homophobia and gender-critical feminism are impossibly different. Interestingly, homophobia and transphobia are identical, and this is proof that gender-critical feminists are not transphobic. A homophobe is somebody who sees two gay people in love or in a relationship or making love or starting a family and says, "That's sick. That's disgusting. You shouldn't do that." A transphobe is somebody who sees somebody acting atypically of their gender or dressing atypically of their gender or speaking atypically of their gender or carrying themselves atypically of their gender and says, "That's sick. That's disgusting. You shouldn't do that." A gender-critical person sees somebody acting atypically of their gender or dressing atypically of their gender or speaking atypically of their gender or carrying themselves atypically of their gender and says, "Okay, neat. You do you." Now, if that gender non-conforming person then says, "Oh, by the way, despite being biologically male, I am in fact a woman," a gender-critical person would say, "I disagree."
Disgust I can recognize at a glance, because it's the same disgust I felt toward myself for years. It's the disgust I felt when I clocked a trans woman on the L platform in Chicago 5 years ago and decided then and there to abandon my first attempt at transition. It's the disgust I still struggle against every day.
So have you ever heard about this thing called projection?
So, to any die-hard gender-critical feminists still watching this, what else can I say except, on behalf of all trans women, excuse my beauty. Turf.
Better luck next time. Anyway, conclusions. Let's start with like if you liked, dislike if you disliked. Subscribe for more of this content and more of completely different content. Right now, I'm halfway through a thing where I'm reviewing a whole bunch of movies, but honestly, the reviews are pretty great, so watch them. But after that, I will be back into more academic stuff, I guess. Get the bell on so you get updated as soon as I upload a video. Follow me on Twitter, and if you retweet this video there and share it with as many people as possible, that would be awesome. Finally, you can throw me $1 on Patreon and get your name mentioned in the credits. You can also give me $3 and I will become your personal YouTube hitman, responding to any videos you like. That's not necessarily true, but I'll try. Thanks to my patrons, Hannah Taylor, Kirsten, and LRX89. Ooh. I don't think I'm even going to go back and correct all the times I fucked up. Because, you know. Oi.